Hello children. So today once again I am here before you with my series of storytelling. And today the chapter or the poem which I have taken to explain and to discuss with you. So the name of the chapter or the poem I'm not going to announce, right? Because let me first do some kind of general discussion, a kind of warm-up exercise which will really prepare you. It will mentally prepare you and it will set your mood for learning. So, children, some 10 to 20 years back, if you visited somebody's house, going there, you would find that all the walls of the house were covered with the portraits and photographs, right? So, it was a trend of 20 years back that the entire wall of the house, all the four walls of the house were covered with the photographs of the family members, right? But with the change of time, everything changes. The sense of the people's interior decoration and designing changed. Their sense of making their room look beautiful, beautification has changed. And that's why if you visit now anybody's house, you would not find any kind of photograph or photo frame hanging or hung on the wall, right? So that is only the things which happens with the change of time. So the time brings changes in everything. So the same thing is true. We don't see any kind of photograph or the photo frames hanging on the walls of a house, in the walls of a house. So now by this time you must have got some kind of idea that what we are going to study today. So today we are going to study the first poem of your Hornbill book, that is A Photograph, and is written by Shirley Tolson. Right, children? So before I actually start telling you and describing you the poem and teaching you the poem, I would like to discuss some of the difficult words, which are given in this poem. So the first word we find in this poem, it's called paddling, and the meaning of paddling is walking. And the second word that we find in this poem is transient, and the meaning of transient is short-lived and which is very temporary. And one more word you would find going at the end of the poem is wry. Wry means it's ironic, it's mocking, it's criticizing, it's being sarcastic in meaning. So these three words you would find difficult to understand. The first word, again I repeat, it's paddling, that means walking. The second word is transient, that means short-lived and temporary. And third word is wry, W-R-Y. So that means to criticize and mocking and making fun of. So this were the three difficult words that you would come across, which I have already explained. Now let me explain the poem and let us discuss with the poem. This poem is very short, but it's beautiful. Being short, but at the same time it's very beautiful. So in the poem, and before I start telling you the poem, I would tell you one more thing, that the poetess, a poetess has written this poem. But we can at time can call the poetess a poet. We can treat the poetess as a poet and we can call it as a common gender. So at times we are going to again and time and again I'm going to referring, I'm calling poetess as poet. So that would equally stands for Shirley Tolson, right? So in this poem, the poet recalls and remembers his mother looking at a photograph, right? Looking at a photograph, while she is looking at a photograph, she remembers and recalls remembers her mother and recalls her mother's memory. Now, the mother, she died some 12 years back, and the poet is not able to express her grief in words. This poem is actually a tribute. The poet has given a tribute to her mother. She looks at a photograph, and the photograph has a frame in a cardboard. Now in the photograph you find there are three young girls are there, and the girl who stands in the middle, she is the tallest and the oldest of all the three girls. And the girl who stands in the middle, who is the tallest and the oldest, she is poet's mother. Now that besides poet's mothers, there stand two other girls. That means on the either side of poet's mother, there stand two other girls. Their names are Betty and Dolly. They are the cousin of poet's mother. Now they went on paddling. They went paddling on a beach holiday, right? And this photograph was taken by their uncle, means the uncle of poet's mother. Now, when they were there, it's also said, one line is said, that the water of the sea touched the terribly transient feet. Now here you need to understand what is the meaning of transient and why this word transient word is used for the feet. So the meaning of transient is very short-lived, it is temporary. And it is said because, when we compare the life of a human being with that of the ocean, sea or mountain, we find the maximum lifespan of a human being is 80 to 90 to 100 years, whereas seas and ocean and mountain stand for thousands of years. And that's why here it said that the sea water, the wave touched the terribly transient feet. Now this mother, the poet's mother, she would after 20 to 30 years, she would laugh looking at a photograph, and poet's mother would tell poet how their mothers got them dressed for the beach holiday. Now, taking this poem further, we find what was the favorite pastime for the poet's mother and what was the favorite pastime of poet. We need to understand these two things. That there was something different which was the pastime of poet's mother, and for the poet, her favorite pastime was different. So now let us discuss what was poet's mother's favorite pastime. So her holiday on the beach was poet's mother's favorite pastime. And what was poet's favorite pastime? Poet's favorite pastime was the laughter or the smile on her mother's face. Now, what has happened? Now, the poet's mother, she died some 12 years back. And in terms of number of years, it is the same number of years as she was when the photograph was taken. That means in photograph, poet's mother was some 12 years or so on, and these 12 years are the same time before which her mother died. So that's why both of them, they have suffered a loss. Poet's mother suffered a loss because she lost her that holiday beach, that happy moment and timing which she had while she went on holiday beach. And what was the loss for poet? Poet's loss was the smile on her mother's face, because her mother is no more. She died 12 years back. Now both this poet's mother and poet herself, they are trying to, they actually, their favorite time was very much attached with them, and they really enjoyed and cherished the moment, but they cannot live these moments again. So they have gone through some equal amount of loss, and they are trying to overcome from this loss. So coming to the end of the poem, we find that the poet is extremely sad. She is unable to express the loss of her mother's death, and she becomes silent. And this silence, this means the loss which the poet has undergone through the death of his mother. So that silence makes entire thing ultimately silent. So this was the poem. Now one more thing I would like to discuss, children, that the figure of speech or the literary devices used in this poem. So in this poem there are used 3 literary devices or the figure of speech. The first one is alliteration. So first I tell you what is alliteration. Alliteration is the repetition of similar consonant sound at the beginning of each word of a line. Once again I repeat, what is alliteration? Alliteration is the repetition of similar consonant sound at the beginning of each words of a line. So in this poem there is given alliteration. First alliteration we find my mothers. So the words are my mothers. So in my the first letter is M and mothers the first letter is M. So that's why here it is alliteration of M and M. The second we see terribly transient. So terribly the first letter is T and transient again the first letter is T. That's why terribly transient is again alliteration. Next we see stood still. So stood still is again example of alliteration because stood the first letter is S and still again the first letter is S. Now at the last of the poem we find silence silences. So silence silences, here again it is a beautiful example of alliteration because silence the first letter is silence and silences again the first letter is silences. So here we have some alliteration. Now there is given another figure of speech in the poem, that is oxymoron. Oxymoron is, it's a term which contradicts itself, which opposes itself. It is levered ease. Levered ease. Levered means when you put so much of hard work, so much of effort. And the next word is ease. Ease is a moment which you are relaxed, we are not doing anything. So levered ease is a fine example of oxymoron. And there is one figure of speech, one more, which is used in the poem, that is epithet. So epithet is a phrase, expressing the quality of a person or thing. So terribly transient, here we are talking that feat, that means here we are talking about the lifespan and the lifetime which a human being lives, that is 70 to 80 or 90 years. So these three figure of speeches are used in this poem. Once again repeat them. So the first figure of speech is alliteration, second is oxymoron, and third is epithet. Is that clear, children? So this is the complete poem I have narrated. That's very simple, but at the same time it's very beautiful. Now you go through in the textbook, you would easily understand, and then we would discuss the question answer. Is that clear? Thank you and God bless you.